Developing story, the Brooklyn pastor who was robbed of expensive jewelry during a live stream church service has been indicted on federal charges and is now in custody. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Bishop Lamor Whitehead is accused of fraud, extortion, and lying to the FBI. According to the indictment, Whitehead convinced a parishioner to invest $90,000 of her retirement savings with him. He's accused of spending the money on luxury items. Prosecutors say Whitehead extorted $5,000 from another victim and lied to agents about his cell phone.
What up, what up? I don't know if you guys remember this guy. He gained a bunch of internet fame back in June or July of 2022 this year. He's a pastor in Brooklyn. He has a little church, and allegedly his church got robbed while he was doing like a Sunday service or something like that. And the video got online and it went viral. And he went viral because he has like he drives luxury cars like Rolls Royces, Bentleys. He wears designer clothes. He lives in a big house. He has a very flashy lifestyle and he's a very flashy person, but his profession is being a preacher. So him being robbed for about $300,000 worth of jewelry and money while he was at church giving service, it was kind of an odd story. The video was really odd. He was kind of odd. He did a press conference in front of his church. His church is like a little hole in the wall place. They don't even got pupils. They sit on little plastic chairs. It was a crazy story when it first came out, but now today he's back in the news because the Department of Justice has filed a 4-count indictment on him. So on today, Monday, December 19, 2022, the U.S. Attorney announces arrest of Lamor Whitehead for fraud, extortion, and false statements. So this is the press release right here. I'm going to go ahead and go through the indictment with you guys and show you what they allege that this individual did. So here's the indictment. So I'll just read it. It's very short. The charges in this indictment arise from a course of conduct in which Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, sought money and other things of value from victims on the basis of either threats or false promises that the victims' investments with Whitehead would benefit the victims financially. In fact, Whitehead, who leads a church in Brooklyn, New York, intended to and did defraud the victims by taking their money and other property with no intention of investing it, returning it, or enriching the victims. From at least in or about April 2020 up to and including in or about July 2021, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, elicited approximately $90,000 from an individual who attended his church. This is known as Victim 1, through a series of cell phone and internet communications with Victim 1 and her son. Under the terms of their agreement, Whitehead would use the money to assist Victim 1 in obtaining a home, and after doing so, Whitehead would otherwise be able to use the money as an investment in his real estate businesses. However, shortly after Victim 1 transferred Whitehead the money from her retirement savings, Whitehead instead used Victim 1's money to purchase thousands of dollars of luxury goods and clothing, and he continued to use Victim 1's money for his own purposes. Whitehead never helped Victim 1 obtain a home and has not returned Victim 1's money, despite her request that he do so. In or about April and May 2022, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, attempted to convince a businessman known as Victim 2 to lend Whitehead approximately $500,000 and give him a stake in certain real estate transactions. Whitehead told Victim 2 that in exchange for this money and interest in real estate transactions, Whitehead would obtain favorable actions by the New York City government for victim 2 that would enrich both Whitehead and victim 2, when Whitehead knew that he had no ability to obtain such actions. Despite that knowledge, Whitehead told victim 2 that they would make, quote, millions. Near the beginning of his relationship with victim 2, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, also used threats of force to obtain $5,000 from a business owned by the victim 2. At the direction of law enforcement, victim 2 made the payment to Whitehead. During the course of the investigation into the conduct of Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, special agents of the FBI, executed a search warrant for cell phones on the person of Whitehead. Whitehead told the agents that he owned only the cell phone which was then on his person, when Whitehead knew that he in fact owned a second cell phone, known as phone number 2, which he regularly used before and after the execution of the warrant, including to send a text message in which Whitehead identified phone 2 as, quote, my other phone, shortly after telling the agents that he had no other phones. So now they're going to tell you about each count of his indictment. This is count 1. It's wire fraud. The allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 5 above are hereby repeated, alleged, and incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. From at least in or about April 2020 and up to and including in or about June 2021 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Mr. Whitehead, the defendant, having devised and intended to devise a scheme and artifice to defraud and for obtaining money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises transmitted and caused to be transmitted by means of wire, radio, and television communication in interstate and foreign commerce, writing, signs, signals, pictures, and sounds for the purpose of executing such scheme and artifice, to wit, Whitehead made material misrepresentations to victim 1 and her son to obtain money from victim 1 as a purported real estate investment, which he received in part through use of an interstate wire, when he in fact intended to use the investment in whole or in part for personal purposes. His count 2 of the indictment is attempted wire fraud. In or about April and May 2020 in the Southern District of New York, Mr. Whitehead, the defendant, having devised and intending to devise a scheme and artifice to defraud and for obtaining money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises transmitted and caused to be transmitted by means of a wire, radio, and television communication in interstate and foreign commerce, made material misrepresentations to victim 2 and interstate communications, and otherwise in an attempt to convince victim 2 to transfer money and other property to Whitehead. Count 3, attempted extortion. This basically was, to wit, Whitehead used threats of force to attempt to obtain $5,000 from a business located in part in the Bronx, New York, and owned by victim 2. This count, I'm just skipping this because it's repetitive. This was just count 3 is attempted extortion. They're saying that he attempted to extort victim 2 by forcing him to give him $5,000 from his business. Count 4 is false statements. On or about June 8th of 2022, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant in a matter within the jurisdiction, knowingly and willfully falsified, concealed, and covered up by a trick, scheme, and device a material fact and made a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement and representations, to wit, during the execution of a search warrant for cell phones on Whitehead's person. Whitehead told special agents of the FBI that he owned only the cell phone which was then on his person, when Whitehead knew that he in fact owned and used phone number 2. Here, they at the end of the indictment, they go into forfeiture allegations. They're basically trying to get the money back from both of the victims that they allege Mr. Whitehead took from them, and they're saying that if he doesn't have enough assets to repay those victims, then they'll go and get whatever assets he do have to pay the victims back. So they really want to get the victims paid back in this case, and that's their main priority. And then each through all four counts, Mr. Whitehead is facing, for three of the counts, they carry 20-year maximum sentences, and then one of the counts carry a 5-year maximum sentence. So altogether, if he was to get convicted on all charges, which he most likely won't, they would run the sentences concurrently together. So he would only do 20 years. But I highly doubt he'll even. I think they're gonna give him a plea where he'll have to plead to one of the charges and the other three charges will be dismissed. And he might have to do a year or two in prison just because he lied to the FBI and they don't like that. But if he got a good enough lawyer, 9 times out of 10, he'll probably not even have to go to prison. He probably he could get away with like house arrest for a year or so and restitution. So that's it. That's the indictment. It was unsealed today. I couldn't find anything else because this case was unsealed today, and there's no case files on it in the federal system just yet. So that's it. If you like the video, give the video a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this guy in the comments. I'm out.